Okay. Um, Busting football hot takes with ball knowledge. Let's go.
Now, football is this sport full of passion and narratives, where half-truths and myths can often just become the popular opinion amongst fans. So in today's video, we are going to be delving in to some of these myths in football and kind of solving them or busting them with ball knowledge. Because there's a bunch of unpopular opinions that have just become the standard opinion amongst a lot of football fans. And the first one I've got to get off my chest is that Messi wouldn't dominate in the Premier League.
What? Holy shit.
Now, years ago...
No, okay. Because I think the argument, right, and it's always coming from Ronaldo fans, but the argument is that because Messi only played in one league, he can't like do it in another league, and I don't think that's true. I think at the time that Messi was playing, right, I believe what's it called? It was the best league in the world. When Messi was playing in La Liga, it was the best league in the world. And I think that people don't really realize that he still won Champions Leagues. It was like 3 Champions Leagues, right? Without 3 Champions Leagues, like against Premier League teams. He's not like a weak player. He can do it in the Premier League. He was still winning. You know what I mean? He was still the best player in the world. I don't know. Okay.
So I remember there was this thing that a lot of people used to say when making arguments against Lionel Messi. Could he do it on a cold, wet, windy, dark, grimy night out in Stoke City?
Yeah, but could he do it on a cold, rainy night in Stoke?
But what was once just a small quote became the standard for arguments against, arguably the best player of a generation. Messi for so long, of course, was at the top of football, and the only argument that a lot of English fans had against him was...
Holy shit, dude. It's just like you see stuff like that and you're like, no, he couldn't do it in the Premier League. He could do that. He could do that in the Premier League. He was doing that shit against Sergio Ramos. He was doing it against Sergio Ramos. Probably the best defender of all time.
He couldn't do it in the Premier League. Well, in my opinion, it's obvious. He would be able to do it in the Premier League. He could do it in any league, yeah? He could do it against lions, tigers, armies. It doesn't matter. This guy could do it against anyone. But to actually snipe this narrative, like Mai from Jujutsu Kaisen, to diminish this narrative officially, we have to go through the actual facts, because there's data that backs up that Messi could do it in the Premier League. And this so-called data is just the games that he played against English sides when he came up against them in the Champions League and, European competition. And
that's exactly what I was saying. That is exactly what I was saying. Genuinely, because he can do it against Premier League teams. He doesn't need to be playing in La Liga to be the best player of all time. He just is the greatest player of all time. No one does it like him.
Before all of these games took place, people had nothing to go on, and they were just thinking, how can this diminutive, Smurf-looking Argentinian take on these Brawlic defenders that were leading the Premier League? Well, in the years to come, we would see him challenge Premier League teams and go, put his sword to the necks of every single side. And I think that's where this argument was pinned against Lionel Messi, because during his come up throughout the mid 2000s all the way to the late 2000s into the 2010s, Messi was playing in La Liga where Premier League was so physically dominant. Strong players going into tackles, long throws into the box. We were playing how kind of Arsenal are playing now, but on a different scale, because there was no holds barred. Honestly, you would go in and watch a Premier League game back then, and 30 minutes of it would be off the pitch. There would be corners, fouls, injuries that would stay on the pitch for 10 minutes. It was not a pretty game to watch, but it...
Exactly what I was saying too. La Liga was the best league in the world. No debate. I feel like there's no debate for that. And Real Madrid, Barcelona show it. They were dominating. They were just dominating. It's not close. It's just not close.
Was, I guess, enjoyable because it was like a WWE match. Hell in a Cell, TLC, WrestleMania, SummerSlam. We were looking at these matches like they were events. And to the average Joe, Premier League fan that didn't really know much about Lionel Messi but watched his highlights, we would think, that kid with the long hair and the 5'2" frame, He's not doing this in the Premier League. You know, he's not skinning our defenders just like that. But eventually, we would see that he would do it. And factually speaking, during Messi's reign, you know, he came up against the Big Six 35 times in European competitions, scoring 27 goals. That's him nearly averaging a goal a game, number one in a European competition, but number two against teams that he had, you know, never played before. Like, as a diehard Arsenal fan, I still wake up, you know, in cold sweats thinking about the days that we had to go toe to toe with Messi every single year in the round of 16, where he would just score 4 goals and leave us on the floor,
Yeah,
you know, drinking.
Didn't Arsene Wenger say that? They asked him who's the GOAT, or who's the best player right now. He said,
Who's the best player of all time?
Lionel Messi.
He said Messi, and then they go, who's the greatest of all time? He said Messi. Arsene Wenger said that. Like during
Lionel Messi.
a good Arsenal team, he still said that. So I feel like, yeah.
In water from the puddles of mud that he had created by walking around our defenders so often. We were just getting ridiculed year in and year out. I think there was only one year where we put up a fight, where Arshavin scored the last minute goal in the first leg, and then in the second leg, you know, Van Persie gets a red card or something like that. But in every other year that I saw Messi come up against Arsenal, he was moving like he had plus 99 attributes in all aspects of his game. Like
Lionel Messi.
this was some sort of on YouTube, you know, the career mode experiment. Oh, I made a 99 overall player and put him on the worst team. They had a 99 overall player, but they were the best team. Barcelona were really that good, and Messi was giving me nightmares. Like, it was crazy. He actually put 9 goals past Arsenal in 6 times meeting them in Champions League competition. And it's not like he only scored goals against Arsenal, because during this time, you know, let's be honest, Arsenal weren't at their most successful, but he scored 7 goals in 8 games against Manchester City, whilst also scoring a combined 6 against the likes of Manchester United and Chelsea, who during this time were kind of in and out of winning the league. And then even when you think and say, oh, but they weren't in the big moments, yes they were, because Champions League 2009, goal against Manchester United. Champions League 2011, goal against Manchester United. They were both in the finals of the competition. Like, these aren't just stats that we can look at for this argument, they are final pieces. That's it. The myth has been
And he did it against Ronaldo too. Just saying.
busted with ball knowledge. Messi could do it in the Premier League, and it's a fact. Tactically speaking, the idea that the Premier League's physicality could stop Lionel Messi just discredits Lionel Messi's type of style during his prime years playing football. That's like also ignoring the fact that we had Eden Hazard in the league that was getting called Lionel Messi. So imagine if we had the real thing. You could genuinely combine some of the best attributes from the Premier League greats in terms of attackers into one player, and eventually that player would just form into being Lionel Messi. That's how good Lionel Messi was during his prime, and that's why this myth and this argument as to why Messi couldn't do it in the Premier League is so stupid for me. And growing up, I heard this a lot, talking about Messi, and even, you know, how people would kind of say that Messi's not as good as Ronaldo because Ronaldo did it in the Prem.
Ronaldo could play for Millwall, Queen's Park Rangers, Doncaster Rovers, anyone, and score a hat trick in a game. I'm not sure Messi could do it. I think Messi's a Barcelona player. See, that is actual glaze, because that's just not true. Ronaldo's never not played for the best team in the league, right? It was Sporting. Then he went to Man U. From Man U, he went to Real Madrid, and then he left to Juventus. And everyone's like, "Oh, that's conquering leagues." That's not conquering leagues. He's going to the best team in the league every single time. And yeah, he's winning the trophies. You know what I'm saying? He's scoring goals, but he's going to the best team in the league. He's never not gone to the best team in the league.
And Messi didn't. The argument is false. Now, the next myth that we need to debunk is that English players can't succeed outside of the Premier League bubble.
What?
Now, I know this one could be quite controversial because in the history of like English players, there's not been many that have succeeded overseas. And in recent seasons right now in football, we've seen, you know, a star man move from Liverpool all the way to Real Madrid and not really had the effect that we all thought he would instantly. But this state...
But, okay, with Trent and with Bellingham, it's not that they're not succeeding at Real Madrid. It's that they don't have any management. The manager, okay, Xabi Alonso's a great manager, or he was a great Real Madrid manager, but he couldn't do it. There was too many egos on one team, and so like I think bringing in Jose Mourinho, like they're doing, is either gonna help the team succeed and they're gonna actually win games like they did when Ronaldo and Benzema and all those other guys were there, or it's just not gonna work because there's too many egos in one dressing room. And so it's like, how are you gonna manage that when they all think they're the best player on the team? You know, Mbappe is cocky, Vinny is super cocky, Bellingham, I just said his name, Alexander Arnold. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't know. But I don't think that's their fault. I think it's just the team in general.
It also means that these English players can't adapt to new environments where it comes to, learning a new language, learning new play styles for a new team in an entirely different league. And whether
I didn't even think about the language thing. Anthony Gordon has fluent Spanish though. He's gonna be the best English Barcelona player ever. I'm just saying.
that league is less physical or slower in pace, a lot of English players can't really adapt to it and, see out their highest potential. And I think it's because in history there's been very few English players that have ventured abroad. And what really hinders this statement and makes it almost seem true is the high profile players that have, kind of disappointed on the stage when they've made a big move abroad. The likes of Michael Owen making a move from Liverpool to Real Madrid. Michael Owen was one of the original English wonder kids in football. Rapidly getting behind defences, this guy would also win a Ballon d'Or. But you would never see his potential be fulfilled, even though he would be given this grandiose move to a bigger club, to a new league. He would never be able to replicate his play. He had a more of a stop-start career. Similar to the likes of Jonathan Woodgate, who was, a high-profile centre-back in the Premier League. Going to Real Madrid, you'd think that he would kind of replicate this composure that he had on the ball, but also, this ability to just make a tackle at any point. But no, debuting with literally an own goal and a red card, almost the worst thing possible. I don't think it could get any worse. But knowing this guy, it probably could. He could have headbutted the manager after the game accidentally after he slipped on a banana in the changing room. Things like that can happen. And I think during the early 2000s, we had these two big standout players that flopped overseas and specifically for Real Madrid. But it kind of set the standard for players kind of being scared to make that sort of move, to not follow in these guys' footsteps.
90 games missed? That's a lot of fucking games. That of 104 games, he missed 90 of them. That's a lot. That's a lot of games.
However, there are a bunch of other players that moved abroad and saw success. And I think it's only the ones that were bad.
That he has like 80-something goals this season. That's insane. And I know it's the Bundesliga, and I know he has Michael Olise, but 80 goals in one season? But he's not beating Argentina. He's not beating Argentina. Mark my words. There's another one. Mark my words. Right there. He's good. He's not that good. He's good. He's not that good.
Really gets highlighted because, they were so bad. And of course, I wasn't there to witness some of.
And then can we talk about that? How first of all, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 in the FIFA rankings, right? Argentina, France, Spain, England. I think it's Argentina, Spain, France, England. But it's just, it's literally just Real Madrid and Barcelona, right? Messi, Bellingham, Lamine Yamal, Pedri, Mbappe, Tchouaméni. So many players. I think this is crazy. I think La Liga's coming back. I think everybody needs to be ready for it. I think El Clásicos are going to be watched way more. I think it's going to be way better. 100%. And I think Premier League is going on a downfall because there's just a lack of creativity. They don't have any Lamine Yamals. They don't have any Mbappes. It's just not how the Premier League is set up right now. They're going back to a very technical age, and I think that's wrong. I don't think they should be doing that.
These guys play, and I didn't see them at these clubs, but the likes of Gary Lineker back in his day was playing for Barcelona. Steve McManaman made a move from Liverpool also to Real Madrid in the early 2000s. I think it was like 1999 to 2000. And he had a successful career there. You know, he was playing on that right hand side but could also dip in to attacking positions, and he was helping out. He was one of the more underrated players during this period in time where Real Madrid were about to invest in this Galacticos team. And with McManaman scoring a volley in the 2000 Champions League final, you know, that's enough. That's enough to tell me that you are a superstar. Whilst also winning 2 La Liga titles during his time with Real Madrid, then a few seasons after, you would see David Beckham, who completely changed the culture of football, making this move from Manchester United to Real Madrid.
I do not like Beckham. I don't think that's a hot take. I just don't like Beckham. I think... Oh, I never watched Beckham. I think I was like 4. I don't know how old I was, but I didn't watch Beckham. I just don't like him. Look at him. Stupid. Okay, that was mean. Sorry.
He was one of the first global superstars in football. But along with this superstardom, you know, David Beckham actually brought some end product, leading the assists ranking for Real Madrid in the 2006/7 season. And also when you actually look at that Michael Owen season with Real Madrid, in that season he scored 16 goals, whilst also having the best goal to game ratio in La Liga during that season. He just couldn't beat out the likes of Ronaldo Nazario, you know, for minutes. How could he? But it's actually a myth that he was totally bad. He was actually quite good. An efficient striker that when utilized put the ball in the back of the net. And then you fast forward into the 2010s and 2020s and you get the likes of a Jadon Sancho who ripped it up in the Bundesliga, and a Jude Bellingham who also was in a side that Jadon Sancho was leading in. And from Borussia Dortmund, Jude Bellingham would go to Real Madrid and just destroy it in his first season, and even now he's an important figure in their side. But it's not just these outliers that you got to talk about. You know, the Kieran Trippiers who made a move to Atletico Madrid and was vital. You know, he left Spurs back in 2019 and everyone's thinking this guy is past it. He's washed. But under Diego Simeone in the 2020-21 season, he helped them win La Liga. We've also seen the likes of Fikayo Tomori make a move from Chelsea to AC Milan, and in the 2021-22 season, you know, no one could get past him. And even when you delve further back into history, the likes of Gary Lineker had a successful career with Barcelona. Kevin Keegan was a 2-time Ballon d'Or winner back in 1970 with Hamburg in the Bundesliga. What's going on? You've got the likes of Paul Gascoigne with Lazio, you know, David Platt with Sampdoria. And I think the key for busting this myth is that those that can adapt do succeed. And I think honestly the original myth of, you know, English players can't, you know, succeed other than the Premier League is kind of...
How many people really be saying that though? Are people really saying that English players can't make it in the, like, outside of England? I don't think I've ever heard that. I know I'm in America, but I just don't think I've ever heard somebody say that. Like, honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know if that's a good argument. I don't think anyone's ever brought that up to me in my many debates.
Outdated. And I think that statement was only around because during the 2000s you didn't see as many English players going overseas, but now during the 2020s, you know, so many players, when they're given that opportunity to go elsewhere, they will take it. Even in the January transfer window that just passed, you just saw Ethan Nwaneri of Arsenal make a loan move to Marseille in France. There's a lot more leeway in modern football for English players to go out on loan or make a full transfer to overseas clubs. You know, think about how accessible it is to learn a new language, to adapt to a new environment in, you know, the modern era that we're living in. Back in the early 2000s, it was definitely harder. Back in the 1970s or the 1980s, it was probably so difficult. You got to learn a new language by the book. You got to go into actual lessons. There was no Duolingo. Now, the next myth that we got to debunk is that Thierry Henry was never a big game player. Now, this one is personal. You know, as an Arsenal fan whose legend is Thierry Henry, you know, the highest scorer for the club, the greatest scorer for the club, one of the greatest Premier League players of all time. This statement has been floating about in football discourse. And firstly, I will admit, you know, Thierry Henry, after watching that 2006 Champions League final between Arsenal and Barcelona, he was missing some sitters. Clutch moments where Arsenal really needed to get it over the line. You know, you win that Champions League for Arsenal and you've written your name in the legacy of the club. You know, you've just erased bullying from 80% of schools in Islington. If Arsenal won a Champions League, I haven't got to say anything to Manchester United fans growing up, or Chelsea fans when they won theirs. What am I supposed to say? You know, Henry bottled it in that Champions League final, missing chances.
Yeah, but at least he's not a Crystal Palace fan. I'm a Crystal Palace fan. We don't win nothing. We won 3 trophies this year, though. Just saying. 3 trophies. And then our manager's going to a Forest? That's bullshit. That pissed me off when I read that. I don't like that at all. That's stupid.
That he would never usually miss. But the statement that he is not a big game player, that's just insane. And I think the main fuel for this argument is that Thierry Henry disappointed in finals. And if I'm going to be completely unbiased, it's true. Thierry Henry played in numerous major finals for Arsenal, and in finals for club and country, he recorded 0 goals. However, to perceive a game, you have to perceive a game. Like a lot of the people that make the argument that he was dead in these finals because he scored no goals, they've never watched 90 minutes of a lot of the finals. They just see the stat of the 0 goals. I'm telling you, if you watch one of these finals where Thierry Henry appeared in and, you know, didn't score, you would see that he has an effect on the game even without scoring, and it's called the eye test. But again, I must play devil's advocate, you know, like I've got some sort of demon within me, you know, like Yuji Itadori from Jujutsu Kaisen. One side of me will say that Thierry Henry is a baller, but the other side of me, okay, his rival at the time, or during the 2000s, mid-2000s, Didier Drogba, was the complete opposite. You know, scored in every single final. So does that mean that Drogba was a better player, more decisive than Thierry Henry? Or more of a big game player? That's up to you to decide. Is he better than Thierry Henry? Hell no. However, now I must try to separate the narrative from reality. Because whilst that finals record is factually correct, there, you know, are other things around it that need to be spoken about. Because goals aren't the only measure of recording someone's brilliance in a game. Like I made an entire video talking about the
striker. Right, so he has to score goals. It's his job to score goals. It's not like Messi. Messi's job wasn't to score goals, he just did. You know, or like Gareth Bale. It's not his job to score goals. Well, okay, actually, hold up. It is their job to score goals. They're wingers, they're forwards, so they are supposed to score goals, but I mean, he's the striker. He's the main man at Arsenal. And he couldn't do it? I didn't know that stat. I didn't know he never scored in a final. That's kind of sad. But he's still probably one of the best strikers of all time. It's not that crazy to say that.
Best, you know, 0 GA performances in football, and I will probably make another one. There are so many performances where a player hasn't scored or assisted, yet were one of the best players, if not the best player on a pitch. And what we really need to take into account is that a lot of the journey to get to these finals was paved single-handedly by Thierry Henry at times, to the point where you could call a lot of what he did a carry job, you know, carrying this Arsenal team forward when they needed him most. Like, let's go back to that 2006 final between Arsenal and Barcelona. You look at the previous rounds before that, and Henry single-handedly brought Arsenal to that point. You know, they were playing a makeshift sort of team during this side. This was not the invincible squad, yet it worked, with Thierry Henry being kind of the spearhead and pretty much only in single outlet in a starting 11. And there's pure evidence to back it up, like his solo run goal finish against Real Madrid in the round of 16 back in 2006, helping Arsenal beat Real Madrid at the Bernabeu and dominating. Also, he would score in the quarterfinals against Juventus. Like, it's true that Henry didn't score in finals, but without him scoring in the previous rounds, they would never get there in the first place. So that's what makes this argument kind of get voided for me. And even when you look at the 2006 World Cup, did Henry score in the big games? Yes, he did. We love to talk about this quarterfinal where Zidane went 11 versus 1 against this Brazilian side full of, you know, legends. But in the game, it wasn't just Zidane, it was the likes of Henry who scored off a Zidane free kick via a volley. Like, time and time again, when you look back at these competitions.
But it's Zidane. Zidane's maybe top 5 players all time. I think you can make an argument for that. I don't think that's that crazy to say. Maybe top 8, not top 5. Like top 8. Like top 8.
Where Henry didn't score in a final, you look at the previous rounds and he has scored and assisted in pretty much every single one of them. So to say that he's not a big game player because he didn't score in finals, it has to be a joke, because semi-finals are big games, quarterfinals are big games, and round of 16s, they're also big games too. But you can say that he never scored in finals, that's a fact, but you can't say that he wasn't a big game player, and that's where the myth gets debunked. And with this argument, I can also delve into, big games in the Premier League, where over his period of time in the Premier League, he would score 34 goals against the traditional Big Six sides in England. And then scoring volleys against Manchester United, scoring solo run finishes against the likes of Tottenham or a Liverpool. Or like back in 2004 when Jose Mourinho, had some comments about Thierry Henry and that he never scored in the big games. Then in the next game that Arsenal played with Chelsea against Mourinho's men, Henry scored twice in the game.
Well, like usual, like everyone says, I always scored in small games, so I think today must have been a small game again.
So where the numbers do tell one story, that he decided countless big games but just has a record in finals that is bad. And similar to this Thierry Henry myth, we have to talk about this statement of Zinedine Zidane being overrated.
Oh my God, bro. Oh, hell no, man.
Now, of course, many of us know Zidane for his pure way.
Nobody says that. Is that the last thing he talks about? I'm not watching that. That's bullshit. Nobody says that. Nobody says Zidane is not one of the best players of all time. Someone says he's overrated. Nobody says. I'll listen to a little bit of this and then I'm probably done. I don't need to hear all that.
His volleys, his headbutts, his bald head, his managerial career with Real Madrid. But despite the highlight tapes showing that Zidane honestly looked like a god amongst men, in his highlights, people don't believe it, because they look back on Zidane's career in the numbers section and it looks like he's just an average midfielder. He's putting up, I don't know, what kind of Mark Noble numbers. And honestly, when I hear people slander Zidane, it makes me just want to vomit. Like, how could you look at any sort of highlight, any form of highlight of this?
There's no argument to say that Zidane is overrated. No argument. I don't need to see the rest of this. That was a good video. Jib Rules. Go check him out. Check me out too. You should like and subscribe. That'd be awesome sauce. Thank you. All right. Peace.